because I had forgotten so much about like what went down in it. Excuse me. There's just it's just good. It's really
excellent,
great trash television. So we should watch season 1 too. Although I think we might have. Actually, I think I might have already talked about season 1 of Love Is Blind like before on the podcast.
I think you did maybe like a year or so ago, but
yeah.
I want to watch the end of that show with you, so I will wait. However, I may watch an episode or two of Love Is Blind Japan that just came out on Netflix.
I saw that
I'm
too.
Interested to see if they're doing the same structure.
Yeah.
Also,
I'll watch a few.
I hope they have some non-Japanese people in it, because the way Japan oftentimes reacts to people who are white or black or anything else is very funny, and it could be interesting on that.
Yeah, I think the concept of like not being able to see someone before you propose to them is more interesting in a from a place like Japan.
Yeah. All right. Well, in that case, I think we're pretty much set for this week.
I think it just started a new one, a new clip.
Good, great. So, hey everybody, we're back with our. They must have put it back out to 3 hours because we're at the 3 hour mark.
Just for us.
Hey, we're back. This is just our cool closer. Actually, weirdly enough, we were going to just quit, but I remembered that there is something that I need to talk about, and probably something that I need to read a little bit of because it is prescient and current. So if you're down with that, I will move into that before we're done. Excellent. I will get started. Can you tell what I'm saying?
I think I heard excellent, and then nothing after that.
Perfect. So, as I'm wont to do, I have my notes for the show, which is quite a bit of stuff. But I also have like endless tabs. Like literally, I can't open more tabs. I have like 400 tabs open. So I have a couple things that are in here that I had meant to talk about. Some of them from last podcast. And I should get through them before we move past them entirely. Yeah. So along with that, there's a lot of dumb shit happening lately. I did have some things reserved so that I could potentially get the name Sexual Antichrist for a band. That's not important. Anyway, so I wanted to touch on a couple things because in the lead up to the Ukraine stuff, I was looking into their Nazi problem, and there is a vote from December 17th, 2021, called the Resolution Condemning Nazism and Racism by the UN General Assembly. So this is a vote in which all of the United Nations associated countries vote on whether or not they want to enact a general policy through the UN. So, you know, it's only as binding as the UN, but to enact a general policy of condemning any positive speech regarding the Nazis, Nazism, and racism. Then this is positive, like holding it up as a good thing. Yes, I'm aware, Skype. Thank you. I have a lot of notifications around me. And that resolution they were doing. So let me get like a little basic thing here. UN General Assembly on Thursday evening adopted a resolution proposed by Russia and more than 30 other countries to condemn Nazism, neo-Nazism, all forms of racism. Essentially it's just hey, we as a United Nations condemn these ideas. We're not going to have positive speech on these things. But 2 countries thought that that was unreasonable and voted specifically against it. Now, lots of countries will like kind of abstain from voting on things like this, but usually with a like, this isn't something that we are involved in or that we care about or something. Most of the time, though, those people who abstain because a powerful nation has vested interest in something that is against what should be voted on as a logical conclusion. So they don't want to bring up bad blood with anybody. So they just say, like, look, it's going to be a mostly positive thing. We're just not going to vote. It's one of those things where, like, if you and 6 friends were all like, we love, I don't know, Jenny. So all of these 6 people are going to vote, and one of them doesn't really like Jenny, but they don't want to stand out, then they'll be like, I'm just not going to vote. Like, it's not that big a deal to me. Jenny, if you're watching this, it was just the name that I thought of. So it's that idea, but the people who vote against it, that's usually more of a thing.
Yeah.
Only 2 nations voted against it. Do you want to guess which ones?
I'm gonna guess maybe the U.S.
Okay. Any other guesses?
Ukraine, maybe.
Those are the 2. So out of the entire UN General Assembly, the United States and the Ukraine said, no, we actually don't want to condemn Nazism. Weird, right? After what I was talking about earlier?
Very cool.
You can go online and read all of the very long and very stupid reasons why America says that it backed out of it and went against it. Most of their reasoning is having to do with free speech. And the thing about free speech is that, one, we don't really have it in this country for anybody who isn't rich. You have free speech if you're rich or if you're conservative. Free speech is a little more limited when it comes to people who are poor or, let's say, not white. Those ideas of speech can be punished by the police or by people in your communities, and it's just sort of accepted that that's how it works. But we don't really want to talk about that, and we definitely don't want to fix it. So we voted against that shit. Also, we're funding Nazis in Ukraine, so we're not going to say we don't want this. And Ukraine submitted part of their fucking police force and like military strength to Nazis, so they're not going to say they're going to condemn them because they probably wouldn't like it. So that's a fun one. A second one, though, here is a vote from, when was this? I wish they would put the date a little more up in the front. This is a vote from, I want to say, since it is apparently not going to tell me, I want to say this was from 2019, maybe 2018. Not long ago, a couple years ago. So this is the global nutrition resolution. The stated goal is a better and healthier world through better nutrition. It's a UN resolution that basically says, okay, so member states should improve nutrition, health conditions, and living standards, address hunger and malnutrition, promote food security, food safety, and sustainability, and promote resilient and diverse food systems. The basis for this was essentially just making access to food a human right was what the UN was trying to put through, so that was a recognized worldwide attempt, was to just say having access to food as a government is a right for people to have, not something that is vaguely accessible. Like having being able to eat is something you need to live, so that is something we need to make sure everybody has. What 2 countries do you think didn't vote positively on this one?
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say the U.S. probably. I don't know about Ukraine for this one.
It wasn't Ukraine, I'll tell you that for sure.
China?
And this one has a more this is a weird one. So this is not going where you think it's going, but it might be in some ways. So in the yes, making this a right, 157 countries said yes, that this needs to be a human right. 2 countries said no, and 1 country abstained. The 1 country that abstained, I just think is funny. The country that abstained is Hungary.
Nice.
I mean, that's just a little one for.
I feel like they might have just done that for the memes.
I mean, they did it because they have a fascist leader, but
for the memes.
Also, it is a pretty good one. 157 countries voted that absolutely, yeah. The no's are the United States, and I'll get into why, and it's dumber than you think, and also obviously garbage. But the other one is Libya, because I think they just, from what I can tell, it seems like they don't have the ability to, so they voted no. Because I'll say one thing, America and Libya.
Then I'm sure what we have going
on. United States and Libya, they're not buddies. This is not a joint thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
So this is an article from Food Politics. So this article goes on after saying the vote counts to why did the United States vote no? The U.S. mission to the UN explains its position on the grounds that the resolution, 1, favors abortion. Quote, we do not recognize abortion as a method of family planning, nor do we support abortion in our reproductive health assistance. So that was one of their reasons why food security shouldn't be a human right.
How did we get from point A to point B?
Well, I have good news. If you wanted more context, fuck you.
Okay. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Sure.
2, they are against the resolution because it promotes free trade of medicine. Quote, this could lead to misinterpretation of international trade obligations in a manner which may negatively affect countries' abilities to incentivize new drug development and expand access to medicines. Which to me says, we charge a lot of money for our medicine, and we're not going to give that up just so that people can live. So that's cool. And the third reason why the United States said they would not call food security a human right is that it promotes migration. We believe, quote, we believe the resolution represents an effort by the United Nations to advance global governance at the expense of the sovereign rights of states to manage their immigration systems in accordance with their national laws and interests.
Gotta fight against that one world government trying to make sure everyone has food and medicine.
Yeah. So also this article just ends with I don't know, we're all fucked anyway, and the United States says that we should be. Like, that's basically how this ends. They do state, like, UN resolutions are non-binding. It's like a social contract, which, yeah, of course. But, hey, you would think if they're non-binding and the United States had any interest in eventually doing any of these things, they would have said yes just so everybody thought they were good people. But the fact that they're saying no to food security for the worst reasons possible, and they're saying no to condemning Nazism, and all of this is like in the last 2 to 3 years. One of them was like a month and a half, or sorry, 2.5 months ago was the Nazism one. So like, fuck, I don't know. Yeah, America loves Nazis, loves people starving to death. That's just what we're about. So
it's also so telling that, like, especially for the Nazism one, like, we're not even willing to do the most performative, stupid shit, like voting for a resolution in the UN. Like, what is actually going to come of that?
Nothing.
Either way. So,
we'll
like,
look
you
better
can't even
because
do
we
that.
said we don't like Nazis.
Right, like,
but it's like we're, as a country, we're afraid to even say racism is bad, because that would be a bad look for us, because we count on racism to hold up our whole shit.
Right. It's like, that's what I'm saying, is that it's annoying that it's so, like, blatantly mask off and, like, not even trying to come off as, like, performatively woke or anything.
Yeah, and for anybody who wants to boomer their way into being like, well, it's not that big a deal, like, people vote against this stuff all the time. We're the only people who voted against this stuff.
Yeah.
In the entire world, we're the people who said no to these two things that are some of the most important things that exist other than, like, climate. And I guarantee that would go the same way if we had that come up.
Yeah.
We are a capitalist hellscape, and anybody who doesn't recognize that, like, capitalism is what's happening here is just being willfully ignorant at this point. We've had like 6 solid years of really getting a good look at it, and anybody who's like, I think it's like you're overreacting, is actively, like, in the range of like being pro hurting people at this point, because there is no, like, just ignoring it. Like, it is very open.
Yeah, I mean, it's like willful ignorance at this point if you're not acknowledging that kind of thing.
Anyway, so I thought those were important to get out of the way, because they're very weird and, like, also weirdly current. I also feel like somehow if there's an Eternals 2, they will bring those things up as, like, positives. Like, it feels like the Eternals has some sort of weird inner politics that are very pro that kind of bullshit. But that may just be me and the both thick and thin Chardonnay I've been drinking.
Maybe. I wouldn't super put it past them. But hey, I do have some good news.
Oh. Let me hear.
This weird tube of bourbon candy.
Yeah.
I opened it, and it's just a tube of compressed cake that is lemon flavored.
Do you have more?
I might. I'll look in my bag. I didn't finish this, so I can try and keep it.
No, don't. We can find it again. You don't need to keep half of a cake tube. But I am.
I don't think it'll retain its moistness. So I'll see if I have another one in there.
I would like to try this cake too.
It's like a lemon cake. It's pretty good. So that's the good news for today.
Well, I don't think anybody in the United States or Libya deserves to eat it, and Hungary has nothing to say about
Makes
it.
sense.
So that was one of the political things that I wanted to get into that I almost forgot about. I have some more detailed information on Kazakhstan. It's not super interesting. I told you like the main elements of that. I do just want to mention again that there is I talked about this last time, I know, but maybe people will hear it this time and didn't last time because it was at the very end, and this is a new video. There is a space online where you can buy the idea of a portion of wine and then sell it called Vint. That is wine NFTs. It's so fucking stupid, and it is the worst version of the stock market, I thought, until Fly Fish Club, which is the dinner club in New York, where you're supposed to use your membership as an NFT and like sell and buy them to like support like blockchain stuff as well. Tying exclusivity to a GIF, that's a cool one. And then, so if people have been watching this for a while, like 2 fucking years ago, I talked about, what is it, Masterwork, the NFT, like stock market art trade where they buy art, hide it in a basement basically, and then sell tiny portions of it to be NFT like buy-ins. So it's like if you could turn art, the idea of art into a timeshare and then try to sell that to people to resell it. It's the worst version of a pyramid scheme, but it's also taking actual real ass art and hiding it where no one can see it so that it has value, I guess.
Yeah, I remember you talking about this.
That's still going strong, and they are doing more shit with it. Because I looked that back up while I was looking at all this garbage, and it is not dead like I hoped.
Great.
Also, Gary V, if you don't know who that is, don't look it up. Gary V is a complete piece of shit. He's very rich off of NFTs for unknowable reasons, and I watched a thing that he was doing the other day in which he informed people that they should take their homes that they already own. So talking to a really specific set of people already.
Yeah.
Take the homes that you own and NFT them into digital land so that you can make money off of them in the metaverse for later. Which
for later.
So 2 things seem to be coming from that. One is taking the actual physical space and putting some sort of like NFT attachment to it, like some sort of like NFT blockchain related identifier as to your house so that you can get a very tiny percentage of the worth added in to the sales of that house in the future, which is a really weird fucking idea that sounds like only a grift. And then the other grift is make a digital representation of your house as an NFT so that no one else can use it, and put that in the metaverse so that you can sell your house in a digital space and make money off of it twice. Both of those ideas are, I think, how the world ends, kind of. I'm just waiting. We've already got Tesla apartheid. I'm just waiting for digital redlining to kick in so that we can really just get this all working the right way.
I mean, yeah.
It's not like, don't act
Not
like
far
digital
off.
redlining is at all like a weird idea. Like, it's
No,
absolutely a thing.
it's not. I mean, it seems like the precursor to that has already been done in, I mean, in the real world, you have to have money to do any of that shit anyway. So,
yeah.
It's, seems like it's already done. But,
so,
yay, metaverse.
Yay, metaverse. So, do you have anything else you want to talk about? Because I have one more thing, and it's going to be a real bummer, so I don't want to have a follow-up to it.
The only other thing I had was my tube cake.
The tube cake is great.
That's the only other good news I really had for anyone.
Do you have any other snacks there that you can review?
I can review these incredibly stale hot Cheetos. That might be worth some ASMR action.
That's an interesting bite for a Cheeto.
Yeah, it's really old.
Can you get that microphone up next to your mouth, just so everybody gets a taste?
Well, it's not crunchy now, but yeah, those are old. Oof.
All right. So if anybody wants to dive out now, this won't be super long. I'm going to talk about Texas again. We've already heard about how their power grid is going to get just absolutely fucked up by Bitcoin mining. We have heard about a Bitcoin-related thing in which they want to make an island where you can just fuck children. So that's fun. That's not Texas-related, or is it? And now I'm going to talk to you about last week when they put through the Governor Abbott put through the trans stuff.
Yeah.
So, just for anybody, this is basically for people who aren't already aware of this, so that they understand what's happening. So Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, worked with this. The categories it's under for this this bill is health professionals, children, and physicians. And the summary is whether certain unnecessary medical procedures performed on children constitute child abuse. Ken Paxton is a real piece of shit, so of course they constitute child abuse. But I just want to give people a little bit of context. I want to tell people what's up, and I want to give a little bit of context so people understand why this is a bad thing, and why it's a bad enough thing to where people are essentially at this point saying that if you are trans, especially if you're underage trans, you actually at this point kind of have to leave Texas. Like, if you want to have a decent life, which sucks. I would say after the abortion stuff from not that long ago, all women should leave Texas, but that's just me, and common sense. So the initial thing in this thing that Abbott put through that is written by Ken Paxton to the Supreme Court of Texas, I guess. Starts off with Dear Representative Krause, you ask whether the performance of certain medical and chemical procedures on children, several of which have the effect of sterilization, constitute child abuse. You specifically ask about procedures falling under the broader category of gender reassignment surgeries. You state that such procedures typically are performed to transition individuals with gender dysphoria to their desired gender, and you identify the following specific sex change procedures, in quotes. The fact that the judge is referring to them as sex change procedures and not gender reassignment is already a bad sign. But essentially, this goes on to categorize everything in the way that you wouldn't want. So this is a bill having to do with, or I don't know, an act. I don't know how this is. I think it's a bill. It is put forward with the idea that, so the thing that got news was Abbott came out like 6 days ago or so and said, kind of like with the abortion stuff, hey, if you basically, hey, anybody, but especially if you work at a hospital, you're a medical professional, you're like in law, if you're anybody who has any kind of like civic power, or if you're just somebody's neighbor, and you have a whiff of somebody supporting their trans children, I want you to report them and we're going to criminally charge them. That is what he's putting forward, and it's on the basis of him putting this stuff through with this Ken whatever guy that states instead of like, this is, you know, freedom of choice, this is something that people are choosing to do, that states transitioning as specifically child abuse. Which is interesting because when you get to how some of the stuff is worded, there's a lot of things in here that are protected that are specifically seeming to lead to child abuse. But people aren't talking about that for some reason. I think it's probably because it's Texas and conservatives. But essentially, they are saying if you have a trans kid, if you are trans, if you're in a family that has trans people, you are now under criminal like liability. You are not allowed to aid in any way trans people continuing their life being trans, which is really fucked up and isn't getting addressed that way. It's being addressed as like, well, I mean, you wouldn't mess with a kid's genitals, right? Like, that's how they're trying to address it, which is crazy.
Of course.
So executive summary, and this is 15 pages. I'm not going to go through all this, but I'm going to go through the big parts of it. Based on the analysis herein, each of the sex change procedures and treatments enumerated above, when performed on children, can legally constitute child abuse under several provisions of Chapter 261 of the Texas Family Code. Bullet 1, these procedures and treatments can cause mental or emotional injury to a child that results in an observable and material impairment in the child's growth, development, or psychological functioning. Another reference to Family Code 261. These procedures and treatments can cause or permit the child to be in a situation in which the child sustains a mental or emotional injury that results in the observable and material impairment of the child's growth, development, and psychological functioning. These procedures and treatments can cause a physical injury that results in substantial harm to the child. And bullet 4, these procedures and treatments often involve a failure to make a reasonable effort to prevent an action by another person that results in physical injury and results in substantial harm to the child. So obviously that is stated in a way that is not like the most fun to read. But what it is saying is that anything that is related to transitioning when it comes to a child, whether it is their choice or not, because child choices don't count, those are child abuse because of how Texas legally perceives the idea of assisting with these things. So when it's saying these treatments can cause or permit the child to be in a situation in which they take mental or emotional injury and have an observable material impairment, what they are saying is that they are not cisgendered. They are saying that they are starting at a certain level in which Texas does not recognize people who are not cisgendered, and taking that in some way away from them, as opposed to how people who are trans perceive it, giving them the option to be who they are. So they're treating it.
A lot of the way that this is worded sounds specifically like it's about hormone blockers.
Right.
So, in a lot of what has already been stated, like they mentioned sterilization of a person, which is not something that hormone blockers do, but is something that conservatives like to say that they do a lot. I don't know. Anyway.
Well, and what you're saying is exactly right, because that is what the third page goes into, is they are defining what the issue is, and in defining it, they say no doctor can replace a fully functioning male sex organ with a fully functioning female sex organ, or vice versa. So these sex change procedures seek to destroy a fully functioning sex organ in order to cosmetically create the illusion of a sex change. So they're trying to say that, like, it is very similar, honestly, to their abortion argument of, like, there is a thing and we don't recognize anything except the most literal interpretation of a conservative idea of it. So you don't get to have it, because that's destroying the thing that we recognize, and we don't recognize the other option, so it doesn't exist. So they are taking the essentially what is the, like, only negatives route when it comes to this stuff, in the same way as abortion, of the only negatives of a baby's life being removed, as opposed to it being every other facet of it that is positive on a pre-existing life. And of course it's based on a religious idea of what a baby is, which is not at all like, according to science, anything similar. So it is using that same sense of logic, and I think because they got the abortion stuff through, that is exactly why this is going through. So they refer a lot in this to like literally every paragraph of this is referring to sterilization. So that is like their push, is claiming all of this stuff is sterilization. So there is a section that is especially fucked up that I am trying to find without getting too in the weeds on this.
It is so incredibly frustrating that something like this can get this far when it is obviously and provably against the total judgment of, like, the majority of the medical community.
Yeah.
Like, the total opposite. Like, this is just not based in fact or the way that doctors approach that situation at all. It's just
okay. No,
sterilization thing.
I think sterilization is also like a, when you get into that line of thinking, you are very close to being adjacent to the white supremacy line of thinking, which is, like we talked about with Charlie Kirk earlier, well, earlier in the last video, sterilization and like essentially child protection are always mixed together when it comes to conservatism. It's always like, well, we have children we need to protect, and we can't let white people not have the ability to procreate. We have children to protect, so we can't let race mixing happen. We have children to protect, so we can't let our like upper class families become less upper class. Like it is always tied to this idea that like you got to protect children, but what they mean is we need to elevate white children specifically, and they mix that stuff in with everything. Sometimes it comes out in something like this. Sometimes it comes out in something like Charlie Kirk complaining about 50 Cent coming upside down out of a fake strip club during a halftime show. And looking thick and juicy. I'm out here on page 8 of this 15-page garbage. In this, it's section 3. To the extent that these procedures and treatments could result in sterilization, they would deprive a child of the fundamental right to procreate, which supports a finding of child abuse under the family code. And in section C of this, it reiterates this. Because children are legally incompetent to consent to sterilization, procedures and treatments that result in child sterilization are unauthorized and infringe on the child's fundamental right to procreate. So the issue here with the way that they word this is that they are continually referring to not the individual's right to procreate, which would be one thing. They are referring to the child's fundamental right to procreate, which is, in legal standards, non-existent. According to like United States law, children aren't supposed to be able to procreate. That's kind of the point. And they've built a lot of their defense of this around the idea that children need to be able to procreate, which is really weird tactic to take when you're trying to argue for something like this. They're not, like, they mention the idea of procreating in the future and the idea of being unable to legally make that decision, but they do not bring that back up as they continue speaking. They simply note it as a child's fundamental right to procreate. Like, I am not a law person, but I know enough people who have described to me the way that you have to be incredibly specific when you say everything. And if there were like, if this were about anything other than child abuse, they wouldn't use this kind of language. And the only thing they can think of to legally make it child abuse is to two things. One, say that having a different set of genitalia than what they think you should have is child abuse. And two is children procreating as a right. And those two things are both kind of insane, but in Texas, I guess that doesn't matter. Anyway, it's shitty, obviously, and I've heard a number of funds starting up, which, like, if you want to take the temperature on this as like a real problem for the trans community, which is a real community, there's a lot of people out there, even if you don't know about them. The funds, in the same way as like people having to like pull people out of wrongful imprisonment during the protests, now there are funds to pull people literally out of Texas and help them get started in new states because this makes it impossible to live there. And if you're not sympathetic to this idea, at least you can be sympathetic to the idea, assuming that you're older, because that's often where these non-sympathies come from. If your child was trans and you couldn't talk them out of it, or if that was like, something that you felt like you had to go along with, you're a parent, so it should be a priority to like protect your kid no matter what. Is it reasonable that a state declares that you can no longer receive, not only can you no longer receive any sort of medical care for that child, but in the state, you can be held criminally liable for child abuse for having that child present, just in general. So yeah, that's sort of like the baseline for how fucked up this is that's just everybody who has like transness, which is already like a thing where if you're trans. So I was watching some Sophie from Mars, who is a YouTuber. They have a breakdown of this as well, I think, on their channel. They only make it through a part of it because I think it's a little too heavy for them to deal with. I think they're based in the UK, but they get through part of it, and it's noted during a chunk of it, because they are trans, that all of the things that they're trying to say in here are piling on top of pre-existing stuff, which is medical conditions that trans people are already more likely to have, which they mention in here as reasons that it's child abuse. Those things are medical conditions that are derived from lack of vitamin D, and that's a well-known thing because trans people are not, either they aren't safe or they don't feel safe in public, so they tend to have a sunlight deficiency. That's not like a thing related to chemicals they take. That is a thing related to the social condition that they're in because of the rest of us. And then they're also more likely to have deep vein thrombosis, which is usually like people who are elderly or people who are like very tall or like very heavy. But in trans people, it's because, again, exercising and being outside and like living a healthy lifestyle is not available to trans people in a lot of places, because unless they can pass, they are not able to be in public safely. And then lastly, there is a increased chance of urinary infections and a bunch of other like general like urinary problems. And it's literally because they can't use bathrooms. So they are very prone to having things like that happen because they can't use the things that the rest of us are kind of always able to access as like people who aren't looked at as like detriments to society or whatever. So, and that's a big part of why I wanted to talk about it. Not only because of the weird kid stuff that's already like kind of fucked up, but mostly it is just reinforcing this whole idea that like if you are trans, which much like everything else, like the differences in like your social structure being looked at as like a negative completely changes your life. Gay people being looked at as like selfish for demanding to have their own rights not that long ago, when in fact like it's never been like a thing that was them being the aggressor. Eventually they just had to push as hard as they could to get rights because they just weren't going to get them otherwise. Like it is a depressing but like regular thing in this country that we try to ensure that people who aren't the American ideal, which is, of course, straight white males, that they don't get rights. And you can see that in Texas, especially.
Yeah.
Even more than fucking Florida. Florida is very anti the left, but like they're a little slower on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I do want to look more into that. I heard a little bit about it, but I didn't know much about like the weird framing of like the child abuse part of it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, child abuse is it's the reason for the bill, as they say.
Yeah.
And then having a child abuse bill that just constantly talks about the child's right to procreate is
God.
really not my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is Bill writing, Texas style, covered in gravy.
And complete and total misinformation.
Mm-hmm. I think there was some fucking tweet from like Beto O'Rourke being like not saying anything useful, but that got like some publicity briefly.
I'm cool with the transes. Watch me do a kickflip. Something like that.
Look at me do a kickflip. You like at the drive-in? Yeah, me too. Watch this kickflip.
I watch RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm very woke.
Yeah, and fucking. I like a lot of stuff that RuPaul has produced and does, but like RuPaul is not a trans ally.
No, but I do think that's what O'Rourke would.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Beto O'Rourke would bring RuPaul in as like, see, I love trans people. Like, that's absolutely like his style.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what happened.
Anyway, we got to end this fucking podcast. I hope everybody really enjoyed the totally not a bummer second part of this podcast.
Well, again, as like a non-bummer, I think people should try and find this tube cake because it's really good. There's like no brand name on it, unless bourbon is the brand name. So maybe just Google bourbon cake tube Japanese candy.
Yeah, and while you're at it,
see what happens.
Look up Lay's Thailand and find these fucking gourmet sour cream and onion max chips because they're fucking delicious.
Those are really fucking good.
You know,
really any chips you can get your hands on.
I realized maybe the reason why this was hard to drink was that I've been being a coward. And I think this is gonna fix it.
This does seem like the route that should take.
If I had a little more goose, I would squeeze it in here, really get it going. Now that's a half and half Faygo and Chardonnay from the bottle.
Martha Stewart would be proud.
Oh yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, Martha Stewart, goddamn out there being a thick Chardonnay. You know what it's about.
This one goes out to all of the thick Chardonnays out there.
Yeah.
Or the hot mimosas, wherever you are on the spectrum.
We got hot mimosas and thick Chardonnays out there, and they all deserve love. You know who they are.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't forget this time. So Bejabbers and McClunky.
God. And Begone Thoughts and also the Kazumpit. Jesus Christ.